Okay, so we're now in slideshow mode, and this is just simply a quick review of what happened at the end of the first class so that we can be up to date on this. Uh, this is our Junco again is the dark-eyed Junco, and the color morph is slate colored, which is the morph that's usually present from the Mississippi River east for the most part and up into Canada. The bird is a winter resident. It does not breed here. It breeds in northern bogs. And out west, there are a number of other morphs, including the white-winged junco and the rather pretty Oregon junco, which has rusty sides. I've seen one of those at Pickering Creek, so once in a while they spill into this part of the world. But for the most part, it's sort of a polytypic species. Those morphs that I've talked about were once considered separate species. And if you inherited an older field guide, you may see slate-colored junco mentioned, and then maybe Oregon junco and some of the others as being Western representatives. But they are now all dark-eyed. The only other junco that is a separate species is a Texas bird called the yellow-eyed junco. So this is a polymorphic, if you will, species of bird. And again, it's a winter resident, a nice feeder bird for us. Then we talked about the white-throated sparrow, and we talked about the fact that there are two color morphs of this bird that in older field guides, actually one was thought to be the autumn or immature version of this bird here. But in fact, it's now known that there are two color morphs. They are not separate species. One is the white striped morph, which this picture shows. And I was hoping to be able to show you both the other color morph, which is the brown striped morph at Adkins Arboretum. But we didn't get any white-throated sparrows, so we'll have to wait and do that again later. I'll teach it to you in the field. But if you have white-throats at your speeder, you won't have any trouble telling them two apart. The white-throated, white-striped morph is quite bright on the head, has a very pronounced yellow patch usually in front of the eye. The tan-striped is tannish, where this bird is white except for the throat. They both have that white throat. So, and they occur at about 50-50 in the populations because it's been shown, first of all, that this morph is due to an inversion in the second chromosome. And as a result, it also covers other genes, not all of which are understood. One of them has to do with the color. Others have to do with behavior. Turns out that the white striped males in particular are more aggressive in defending territories, whereas the tan striped males are more homebodies and better at taking care of the nest. You'd think there'd be an evolutionary advantage to one or the other, but it turns out, and this is something I don't know why, but females of one color morph prefer to mate with males of the other. And so the genes are actually about, at least the inversions are about 50-50 in the population overall. There's a lot more to probably learn about that, but still, it's pretty interesting that this kind of stuff is going on right before your eyes and right in your very feeders. There's more to the white-throated sparrow than that. We talked also about the junco out in UCLA, which showed a shortening of the bills as these sparrows began to invade the campus. Apparently, the shorter bills were fine for picking up breadcrumbs and other types of handouts from the students. When COVID struck and classes were closed, the birds in a year or two began to show the longer bills of the wild-type birds, the wild-type line being shown at the top there. These data actually are normalized against the size of the bird or the size of the bill or the size of the leg in order to take care of differences in bird sizes. But when the students returned after COVID, they called that the anthropause, by the way. When the birds returned after COVID, the bills shortened up again. And so they're back to feeding on the handouts, I guess. Amazing how quickly that happened and how quickly the birds returned afterwards. Evolution before our eyes, or at least some kind of change genetically. Here's our white-throated sparrow, and at the very end I talked about the differences in the song that appear to be spreading from British Columbia east. As far as I know, they haven't arrived here, but let's explore this a little bit more by going to this video, which I think is better than I can explain it.
In birdsong, dialects are distinct song variants within a species, specific to particular regions. Generally, we assume that these regional dialects remain stable, are distinct between regions, and persist within those populations. White-throated sparrows are most commonly known for their "Oh, sweet Canada, Canada, Canada" song, known as triplet ending song for the triplet beat of the final notes.
Okay, Wayne, we're not hearing the bird.
Common song variant in the 1960s.
We can hear the narrator, but not the bird.
Hang on, let me pause this.
Second song variant popped up.
We heard something on the phone, though. That's what's kind of fun.
Yeah. Trina,
All right.
can we?
Yeah, let's go back into your share settings.
Okay.
There should be, and remember that those sound check mark things, let's make sure those are checked.
All right, hang on. Let me exit this website for the time being. Oops. Excuse me.
Bright yellow.
Okay. So we go down to share settings. Yeah.
And then, yeah, I can't see your settings.
Let me minimize.
Let's do this. Stop sharing for a moment.
Okay, hang on. Let me go back.
Okay.
There's Cornell.
It's not Zoom call yesterday where Maddie hit the thing.
Now I've just got the Zoom screen. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah. I have to.
We can still see your PowerPoint.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, you can.
So,
because all I
yes,
have is a Zoom screen now.
Okay, so on the Zoom screen, click that share button at the bottom. There's
all I have is it says Zoom. That's my trouble. Let me see here.
Down in your toolbar at the bottom, can you click Zoom there? Is it giving you a choice?
Oh, hang on. No, there it goes. Stop share. Finally got that. Okay, there we go.
All right, so now click share again.
Okay.
And then over on the right, there should be some audio.
On the right, share sound. Okay, that's not click.
Okay. Yeah, click that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, yep, now if you reshare the PowerPoint and we can start that video again.
Oh, yeah, we'll start that again. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Well, and we did this last time, guys, but what we forgot is every time you come into Zoom, it resets to defaults.
Yeah, exactly. Let me see if I can, trying to get a different view here.
Yeah, if you go back to the previous slide, that should automatically restart the video, I think.
Okay, hang on. Show thumbnail. There we go. All right. Let me move this over. Thank you. All right. So let's go back to this slide and do the from current slide. Okay, everybody okay with the picture?
You're going to have to go back to display settings and switch them again.
I love it.
Yep.
And I got there how?
Top left. Display
Top
settings.
Ah, there it is.
Up above, yeah.
Pause. There it is. All right.
And that first one, swap presenter view.
Okay, now you all are all there?
It's getting ready.
Okay.
I don't think it took. Can you click it again?
I sure
There
can.
it goes. Nope, it worked. We're good.
Okay, just took a while.
Yeah.
Okay.
In birdsong, dialects are distinct
You
song
hear it now?
variants within a species,
Yeah.
specific
Good.
to particular regions. Generally, we assume that these regional dialects remain stable, are distinct between regions, and persist within those populations. White-throated sparrows are most commonly known for their "Oh, sweet Canada, Canada, Canada" song, known as triplet-ending song for the triplet beat of the final notes.
You hear that triplet?
Nice.
This was the common song variant in the 1960s. However, sometime between the 1960s and the year 2000, a second song variant popped up west of the Rocky Mountains. This variant is known as doublet-ending song, again, west
I'm
of the
gonna play
Rocky
that again.
Mountains.
Hear the
This
difference?
variant is known as doublet-ending song, again for the doublet beat of the final notes. Prior to 2000, doublet-ending songs were rare, but over the years as we surveyed and collected songs through citizen science projects, they became more and more common and spread across the continent of North America. By 2015, all songs recorded west of central Ontario were doublet-ending, and by 2019, the doublet-ending songs had reached well into western Quebec.
This is over 3,000 kilometers from central British Columbia, where the doublet-ending songs first established. Within the regions where the doublet-ending songs variant spread, it also completely replaced the triplet-ending song in the process. And this change occurred over less than 20 years, which is an unprecedented rate of song transition.
To explore how this swift transition could have occurred, we placed geolocators on male white-throated sparrows breeding in Prince George, British Columbia. Geolocators record ambient light levels, which, when recovered, can be used to calculate where the birds traveled on their migration. The recovered geolocators revealed that birds breeding west of the Rockies overwinter in either coastal California or in eastern Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Kansas. We know that males often sing on the wintering grounds, and the fact that western males singing doublet-ending songs overwinter near eastern males suggests that winter tutoring may be a mechanism for the rapid eastward spread of doublet-ending songs.
This still leaves the question of why males adopted the novel song variant. A hypothesis developed by Dr. Jill Traynor, the indirect bias transmission hypothesis, suggests that in some species, females may habituate to the common songs over time, and that drives the males to adopt novel songs to maintain females' interests. If such a response occurs in white-throated sparrows, it could explain the rapid spread of the doublet-ending song. Female response to doublet versus triplet-ending songs awaits further testing. But if this is indeed the mechanism driving song variation, we would predict that if new song variants appear within populations, they may be adopted and spread quickly. Interestingly, we're currently tracking yet another novel song variant, a modulated doublet, where the first note of the repeating element has a pronounced amplitude modulation. This variant has recently emerged and is rapidly spreading in a population west of the Rocky Mountains.
Oh, there they go. Whee.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing. There's a lot of kind of
In birdsong,
Oh,
dialects are distinct
oopsie.
song variants within a
Stop that.
species, specific.
very nice. Okay. There's a lot of evolutionary information there that just shows that we have to study more. One is the rapidity of this. Evolution, we always think about taking hundreds of thousands of years to change. Here we're dealing with something that's happened over the course of less than a decade. Pretty amazing there. The other is something that Darwin only briefly touched on in his Origin of Species. It's called sexual selection, in which females, in fact, select for males that have different traits, sometimes more accentuated and sometimes then getting more accentuated generation after generation. The extreme versions of those are things like the birds of paradise, where it's almost to the point where the males can barely do anything except display and fly, sort of. There's evidence and lots of models about how that type of selection occurs. It was Darwin briefly mentioned it, but did not consider it a major force in evolutionary biology. We now know that it may actually be a lot more. And in this case, the idea that this song pattern is spreading because the females are reacting to novel male songs and accentuating it. Just shows how powerful a forced sexual selection might be if that theory is correct. Right before our eyes. And the other thing that's kind of unwritten there, but was mentioned in the video, is the fact that a lot of that information came from citizen scientists, people like ourselves going out and doing some types of measurements that in fact eventually got used in evaluating the origins of this novel song. And now, according to the video, there may be yet another one coming along. So evolution before our very eyes in birds like the white-throated sparrow. I'll finish up this section and pause. Yeah, I've got a screen at the top here that you can barely see it, but you should see Aucine plus versus Sub-Aucine there, or Aucine, I guess is actually the correct pronunciation. All of our songbirds are part of a group of birds called perching birds. And there are big subclasses of those, the two biggest being Aucine versus Sub-Aucine. Aucine perching birds have a very complicated voice box. And it is even possible in some birds to control one side versus the other. Thrushes can do that. But those birds all have to learn their song. So they learn it from their neighbors, wherever they may be. And in the case of what the video talked about, where the overlap of the western white-throated sparrows in the wintertime with those from eastern US of A, there was some kind of learning going on where the eastern birds began to pick up and learn the song of the western species. Right now, it's a little bit difficult to hear white-throated sparrows singing, but they do sing occasionally in the winter, especially on warmer days. And you may notice the song is not very perfect. It doesn't have the old Sam Peabody triplet very well. In time, those young birds will learn from their parents how to sing about Old Sweet Canada or Old Sam Peabody correctly. And by the time late March into April and May comes along, the birds will be singing the very familiar song that we saw at the beginning of the video. But for the time being right now, in a sense, they're learning. And that learning apparently was partially responsible for the spread of this unique dialect, if you will, toward the east. And I guess if we keep listening in the springtime, we may start actually hearing that doublet around our yards too. I have not yet convincingly heard that. And again, you can't pay a lot of attention to the imperfect songs in the fall and early winter. But again, in late spring, when the birds are singing a lot, it would be interesting to see if we hear the doublet as opposed to the triplet version. Oh, sweet Canda, Canda, Canda. Sub-Aucine birds, just to finish this off, are very common in tropical North America and in Europe. Around here, the Sub-Aucines are the flycatchers. And if you are enough of a birder to know about great-crested flycatchers or eastern phoebes, their song is relatively simple. It's not complicated. And that's because their voice box, also relative to the Aucine birds, is also very simple, and they don't have to learn their song. It's innate. So that's why that dichotomy is particularly interesting in terms of the evolution of this white-throated sparrow dialect. Okay, I can pause for questions there. Anybody have anything? Evolution in action in your own backyard. And who knows, maybe some people will start to actually want to know what people are hearing around here to help cement whether or not the double-noted dialect has arrived and where it goes from here.
I don't have any questions in the chat, Wayne.
Okay. Everybody okay with that?
You're doing such a great job. Nobody has questions.
Well, that video really helped. I think that unfortunately, I searched through the Macaulay Library at Cornell to try to find any songs that showed the doublets, and most all of the recordings are from the eastern U.S., so they're not of much help. There's variation within them, but they're not useful in terms of being able to tell whether one is doublet or triplet ending. So maybe people with more time than I have can find one. But hopefully that will continue to, that the library will continue to add songs from the West. So the video was actually the only one where I actually heard that doublet clearly. Okay. So I had planned to end last class with this concept from ecology, and we saw it in spades when we visited Adkins Arboretum. It's the process that ecologists call succession, and there are varieties of successions. It has to do with the way habitats change over time, and one of the most classic examples is one we can see around here. It's called bare field succession, and we start with a fallow field that is no longer going to be cropped. And in a year or two, grasses start to invade. And in a decade or so, the environment may turn into grasses with shrub overlay. Some of those shrubs include things like pin cherry and sweet gum. The seeds are lying dormant in the soil in what's called the seed bank. And when given a chance to germinate, they take off right away and form this early grass shrub type of habitat itself. These are all important bird habitats, by the way. Because the growth is low to the ground, more or less, and not necessarily uniform, usually the first types of trees that invade that type of habitat are pine trees. Around here, they're often loblolly pines, but depending on where you live in the country, they might be, if you're from New Jersey, they might be pitch pine. Over in Virginia toward the Blue Ridge, there's more Virginia pine or scrub pine. Down south, there are longleaf pines and a variety of other fairly long-leafed type pine trees. And up in New England, it's a white pine. But these grow because they like sunlight. There's a fair amount of it, and there's a lot of nutrients in the soil because there's not a lot of other things taking them up at this point. So in a decade or two, and sometimes lasting into scores of years, you wind up with a pine forest. But pines are not good at following themselves or succeeding themselves, if you will. They like the light too much, and the nutrients become more limiting as they tie them up in their own wood and foliage. And the result is the pines begin to die out. Now you'd think, okay, that opens up sunlight and maybe some nutrients so that the pines can regerminate and take off. But that's not the case because under those pines are hardwoods. If you go through a pine woods that's not managed for lumber, and you look at the hardwoods underneath, you'll see oak trees and other types of trees with humongous leaves, much bigger than you would find in the canopy later on. They're grabbing all the sunlight they can, and when an opening occurs, as a pine tree dies or falls down, they take off. And the result then is a mature hardwood forest. Used to be called a climax community, and in this part of the world, it's often oak and hickory. But in fact, because we suppress fire and manage our forests as best we can and prevent them from changing further, they change on their own. And oaks are dying out around this region here. I asked the forester what's causing that, and he gave me a litany of possibilities from funguses to insects. But whatever it is, oaks are dying out, and underneath, other types of trees are coming up to replace them. And we're slowly changing what was thought to be a climax community into yet another community, this case managed by, dominated by beeches and maples. And so the process may continue on as well. But one of the things about creating bird habitat is to set succession back. And that's what they were doing at Adkins Arboretum. A year ago, they did a controlled burn to remove a fair amount of the overgrowth of shrubs that was basically creating habitat that was not necessarily conducive to some of the birds they wanted, and also to burn off the thatch that had accumulated over the years from the decay of grasses. Another view of that. And I understand there was one either being done or going to be done in Oxford. I think that there was an open forum about that a week or so ago. This is what it looked like a day or two after the burn itself. Most of the shrubs had been killed, but there were still seeds in the seed bank because in most burns, they don't really get down into the soil very far. The heat doesn't, and it actually stimulates some seeds to germinate so that a year later, not a year later, several months later, in April of that same year of 2025, this is what it looked like. You can see the green starting to come up. This is not green that's been sowed. This is actually grasses that are coming up from the seed bank. And just a month or so later, that growth was fairly rank. We saw the end result of that. I didn't get any pictures, but I'll try to get some when we get some green out there so I can compare them better. But we looked at that controlled burn in the South Meadow as part of our field trip. We did not do any birding there, but you got a chance to see what that controlled burn actually looked like. This is over several acres, and the idea here is to create habitat for species of birds that are declining, and those species are often grass and grass shrub birds. Yellow-breasted chats for the shrubs, a field sparrow for grasses, and throughout North America, the northern bobwhite, which is an early successional species. So when we go on some of our field trips, if we ever get out again, I'll be talking about setting back succession to manage habitat for birds and what that entails, and also talking about early successional species, which turn out to be a group of birds that have been declining most rapidly countrywide here in North America. Questions? Okay, that's ecological succession, and it leads us into habitat management. So now we can go back to basics and have a look at, in this case, I had set this talk up to deal with water birds because we were supposed to be going to Oakley Street. But having failed that, let's see if that's anybody important. No. How come the junk calls want to show up at this time of day? That'll quit in another one more ring. Okay, so we are going to continue in that vein and talk about water birds. Hopefully we'll see some if we get to Ocean City in 2 weeks. And if not, we'll certainly see them at Blackwater and then down at Oakley Street when that happens. Let's just go through this. Shout out if you want. Don't worry about talking over one another. Upper left-hand corner, what's that? Unmute and let me know.
Mallard.
Mallard.
Yes. Mallard. Okay, yes. That's one of our commonest ducks. Not all of them are native here because they've been released by hunting clubs and so on. And so it's one of probably our more abundant of the waterfowl in this region. Well identified by the green head, the neck ring, if you can see it, and some other features that I may show you later. How about the middle upper?
Pintail.
Northern pintail.
Yeah,
That's
right.
correct.
See his tail. Good.
Yeah, and aptly named. I consider it sort of the greyhound of ducks because when it's flying, it's sort of tapered at both ends. The head is relatively small, and that tail streams out at the end. All of these birds, by the way, are drakes. Female ducks are called hens. Okay, here's one maybe less familiar to some of you at least. Upper right.
A widgeon?
Widgeon, was that Mary? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, that's the American widgeon. There is a Eurasian version, which is very close to it. We might see it at Ocean City. There's one over there at Rum Point Golf Course. But this is the American widgeon, and the gunners call it the bald pate because it has a white forehead and crown, which to some people is called the pate or the top of the skull, and it is not bald. Those are white feathers. But so the gunner term is bald pate, but the official name, if you will, is American widgeon. Moving back to the left middle, that's one of our famous birds for here in the Chesapeake Bay. What's that?
Bufflehead.
Nope, left middle, all the way over.
Oh, left middle, right.
Yeah. Who dat?
Yeah. No, this guy.
Used to be very common here. Okay, good. Well, stump you with that one, although it's the
Is it a
Chesapeake Bay.
canvasback?
That's the
Yeah,
canvas.
it is the
That's the
canvas back, right?
back, right.
Red eye.
All
And
right.
here the jizz really helps a lot. The white, very white back and the Roman nose.
Canvas.
That profile is quite characteristic of this bird, even when you see it at a distance. All right, the middle one, somebody already said, that's the bufflehead. It's a smaller duck than the canvasback, and has, again, the drake has that whitish patch on the back of the head that shows up at long distances, very white on the sides as well. In the female, it's just a little white line on the side of the head. It's a common bird here in the winter, so we should see both sexes whenever we can get to unfrozen water. The one on the middle right might be a bit of a challenge for you. Anybody can give me at least the group of birds that it belongs to?
Is it coot?
Nope.
A scope.
Nope.
Scope, not a scope. Scoop, scope.
No.
Hmm.
Well, you may be close. SCAUP?
Yeah.
Okay. Scaup.
How do you? Oh,
Yeah. That's a scaup. Gunners call them blackheads because they tend to have these dark heads. Female has a whitish face, but we'll see that at Oakley Street. There are two species of scaup, greater and lesser. And this is the lesser scaup. And how can I tell the difference? It's difficult. One is, and it may not show up on your screen real well, but the head of lesser scaup tend to have a purplish sheen. Not always visible in certain types of light because just like bluebirds, the sheen is due to the iridescent sheen is due to way light is bent. But it tends, when it does show up, it's purplish. But on the very back of the head, there's a hint of a little bit of a crest or top knot. And if you can see that on either the drake or the hen, it's a lesser. If you can't see it and it's smooth all the way from the bill all the way over the top and down to the back, it would be a greater. Lessers like quieter waters, a little bit closer to shore. Greaters are more likely to be seen in offshore in the ocean or in open bays. We'll probably, if we do get to Ocean City, we'll have a chance to have a look at that. The head sheen on a greater scaup is greenish.
Oh.
But again, the lack of that little, even a hint, if you can see even a hint of that little top knot, it's a lesser.
I know you do. You should say it.
All right, here's a real, this is not a harlequin duck, but here's a real harlequin anyway. Lower left,
I know what it is.
good.
I think
Yeah.
it's a scoter.
Yes, this is a scoter, SCOTER.
Scoter.
And around here, this is the commonest of them. It occurs in the open bay off Tillman. People who do sea duck hunting will go after it. It also occurs in the Choptank River off Cambridge. This is a drake, very colorful bill, but mostly you have the white in the front of the head and on the back, and the gunners call that skunk head. There are two other scoter species, and I hope we'll have a chance to see all three before the course is over. One of our handsomest ducks, a fairly small one, it's about the size of a bufflehead, is the one in the lower left middle, lower.
Hooded merganser.
You got it. That's the hooded merganser. We'll look at why it's a merganser in a few minutes, but gorgeous hood. The hood can be deflated, so it looks like a line behind the head.
Oh, yeah.
But when the males are courting or otherwise alarmed, they will raise it up like that. Very, very handsome pattern to it. The hens have a hood, but not like that. They have basically a coiffure, if you will. And
They have bad hair. They actually have
yeah,
bad
the other two mergansers that we may see, the females have a bad hair day. The hood itself is very ragged, but in the female hooded, it's much more well coiffed. Let's say much more nice. Okay, this is a small duck. It's about the size of the scaup, and this is the one in the lower right. The white face is helpful,
Ruddy?
as is the erect tail.
Oh, yeah.
Is it a ruddy?
That's a ruddy duck.
Yeah.
Okay. And we'll go through what kind of class it is at the moment, but there's a close-up of it. We'll see some on the water in a few minutes. But that's the ruddy duck. So there's some representative waterfowl, most of which I hope I'm setting you up to be able to see and identify. There are lots more, but if you get a handle on these, you'll be halfway there for being good at identifying waterfowl. Not as good as a gunner. We have a colleague who used to be a formal hunting guide and in the Talbot County Bird Club, and he can identify these guys in flight at distances I can barely see them. But that's what JIS is all about, and the more familiar you are with that, the more likely it is you'll be able to identify ducks that you can't see the patterning or the absolute field marks that the Petersons have. Ducks themselves are in two big categories. Well, let's finish the dabblers and then we'll do that. The first big category is dabbling ducks, and they include the mallard and the pintail and some others, including the American widgeon, the baldpate. What makes a dabbling duck a dabbling duck? They have two aspects of their behavior that makes it easy to separate them from the other types of ducks that we'll see in a minute. And that is, one, they cannot dive or do not dive, perhaps. And therefore, in order to reach food in a body of water, they have to tip up and reach down with their neck. They can't go any deeper than that. They also pick off stuff off the water, hence the name dabbling, off the surface of the water. So that when you see pintails at Blackwater, which I'm sure we will see when we go down there, you're going to see a lot of that.
That's what they mean by bottoms up, right?
That's what they mean by bottoms up. This is part of a larger picture that I had, which actually shows pintails like in the top there. But in fact, a lot of pintails, especially in the spring when they're gorging, getting ready to migrate away, they put their tails in the air like that, and that black butt shows up really well. Northern pintail. But all the dabbling ducks do that. If you watch mallards, you'll see the same thing. When we go to Oakley Street, you'll be able to see that behavior just as well. When folks throw corn out for them, they have to dip down and get it. They don't go underwater. So that's the nature of the dabblers. And there are others as well of those species, but these are ones that we're at least likely to see, and probably several others as well. Any questions about dabbling ducks? All right, they have one other aspect of their behavior that differentiates them from the next group, and that is they're able to take off from the water in one leap. Their wings are so adapted that they can slap the water and jump up into the air and take off without having to run along the water or otherwise get airborne. They just slap the water, jump up, and take off. As a result, they can be found in smaller ponds and shallower waters than the diving ducks we're going to meet in a moment. And that behavior is quite characteristic of the dabblers themselves. They actually have special wing adaptations to enable them to slap the water hard and to jump into the air. And that allows them to feed on smaller bodies of water and farm ponds and places like that. One, where they can reach the bottom easily, and two, they can escape anyway by just jumping up. If you go to Pickering Creek or some other places where there are where the waters have been they've reestablished wetlands, and you spook a bunch of let's say teal, which are dabbling ducks. It's amazing how quickly they get into the air. But the same is true for mallards, widgeons, and the rest as well. Okay, any more on dabblers? Anybody have any questions?
No, the bufflehead died.
There's your bufflehead. There's your canvasback. And there's that lesser scup, the same. I think they're the same pictures. Canvasback was these are a group of birds called diving ducks. And diving ducks cannot, well, let's put it this way. They dive, they go underwater. So you get one in your scope and then it's gone. And it may not come up in the same field, depending on where the bird is. They are able to dive underwater and sometimes stay underwater for a period of a minute or two sometimes. This enables them to go down and feed on stuff on the bottom that's out of the reach of dabbling ducks. Dabbling ducks often like to eat decayed vegetation that they can reach. But birds like the diving ducks like these can go down and also not only eat some vegetation that's out of reach, but they can also get mollusks and small clams, arthropods, and other stuff in the sediment itself and bring that up to digest it. So they have that ability. The second thing is that because they dive, I guess in part, they're co-adapted, they're fairly good at swimming underwater, but as a result of that, their legs are further back on their body than they are in the waddling, dabbling ducks. Dabbling ducks can waddle along. These guys are not too good on land at all. And in order to get into the air, they have to run along the water. So when you spook a bunch of diving ducks, you'll see them patter, 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 and maybe run several yards to 100 yards to get into the air. You probably that behavior separates the dabblers from the diving ducks right away, and means you can rule out some of the dabbling ducks if you see this type of behavior. So dabbling ducks can jump into the air. They often are found on smaller bodies of water, ponds, very near shore, even in larger bodies. Diving ducks, on the other hand, can occur further offshore. Some of the smaller ones, especially buffleheads and maybe some of the scaup, can be on smaller farm ponds if they have enough clearance to be able to run along the water and get out. But for the most part, the diving ducks are found in more open waters and a little further from shore. There are subgroups of these. So a subgroup of the diving ducks are called the sea ducks, and this is what sea duck hunters go after. And our surf scoter is one of the examples there. There are two other species of scoters, and there are others like the common goldeneye and some others I hope we'll see. But these are called sea ducks because they're often found very much in the open water or even on the coast in the Atlantic. One of the ones that I hope we see, because it's quite handsome, at Ocean City, maybe off Cambridge, we'd have to see, it'll be a distant look though, is a bird called the long-tailed duck, or used to be called old squaw. And people say they changed the name because it sounds more politically correct, but in fact, long-tailed duck was the European name and it superseded ours. So that when the taxonomists finally wrestled with that, they used the older name. No picture of that here. Well, I was hoping, of course, going to Oakley Street, we'd have a chance to look at more of these. Stiff tails, of which our Donnybrook is a good example.
Mm-hmm.
Here they are further away than that picture on the first, the previous slide. Notice they often rest on the water with their tails erect. Not always, but usually. You have to be a little bit careful because some of the scoters also have short tails and they'll stick them up in the air. But the scoter is a much longer, larger bird. We have probably not much trouble separating it from a ruddy just by those aspects of its GISS. Ruddy duck drakes tend to have the white sides to the head. They are ruddy in the spring, so before they all leave here, the drakes will turn a lovely rust orange, and the white cheek patch will show up even brighter. Females have a black line through that cheek patch, but otherwise the pattern is similar. These are wintering birds, probably took this picture somewhere down near the Oakley Street area. They can sometimes, especially in the spring migration, when they're staging and feeding heavily, the ruddy ducks will sometimes form flocks of thousands. One of the best places to see that is off of Horsehead, up at the Chesapeake Bay Environmental Center, south of the Bay Bridge. That bay in there is often loaded with ruddy ducks, but I've seen several thousands, maybe 8,000 or 10,000 of them in the Choptank River, downriver from Cambridge in the spring. Hopefully we'll see a flock or two of them down off at Oakley Street or on the Cambridge waterfront when we finally get there. And by the time of year when we do get there, I think they'll be around. Ruddy duck, it's a stiff tail. The only other stiff-tailed duck in that group in the United States is the masked duck in Texas. So this is a unique bit. And then there are the mergansers, of which the easiest one to see, because it tends to be closer to shore, is the hooded merganser. This one will occur in the upper reaches of tributaries, maybe off properties such as yours. Also in ponds, it's more likely to be in fresh water than some of the other diving ducks. Mergansers don't have a spatulate bill, the big flat bill that Donald Duck has. They have a bill which is much narrower, and it actually, the upper and lower mandibles are serrated, almost like teeth. These ducks tend to feed, if they can, on fish. And so they're adapted for being able to swim underwater and capture fish, sometimes very small or minnows or whatever, but a different kind of diet. Okay, all of our ducks, with a couple of exceptions, are not breeders in the Chesapeake Bay region. They breed elsewhere. One of the most famous duck factories in the whole country is in the Dakotas up into Saskatchewan and Alberta. That's called the Prairie Pothole region. And we're going to visit that remotely in slides in one of the final lectures, I suspect. But all of these birds that are here in this picture alone are not resident breeders. The commonest resident breeders in the Chesapeake region are the mallard, as you'd expect. Its relative, the American black duck, which I hope we will see at Blackwater, and occasionally a couple of other dabbling ducks. For the most part, the sea ducks are gone. They breed elsewhere and come down here and spend the winter. So as famous as the Chesapeake Bay region is for waterfowl, they're wintering waterfowl. And this is why we're spending this part of the course on them. Questions?
I have a question about the diving ducks' bills. They're all so different. Is this setting them up for success for just feeding on certain things?
Yes, those are really good questions. And the answer is yes. Some of the diving ducks feed on smaller clams and crustaceans in the sediments, and others, like the surf scoter, will feed on larger clams and so on. Probably the most interesting example in that regard is the canvasback. The canvasback used to be the duck of choice in the Chesapeake Bay region for hunting and especially culinary for eating. It fed a lot on widgeon grass, decaying widgeon grass, which is a type of submerged aquatic vegetation that used to be very common here in the Chesapeake. And it fed more or less exclusively on that when the grass was abundant. And as a result, it had a much better flavor than some of these other ducks, which fed on fish and crustaceans. So it was really famous table fare. Unfortunately, our submerged aquatic vegetation has undergone a dramatic decline, and widgeon grass is one of them. And as a result of that, the canvasback for many years was getting to be very uncommon and certainly not well fed. But something happened to help it out. We have an invasive small clam. It's not a native here, called Cribicula. And the Cribicula clams have invaded the Chesapeake Bay sediments. And canvasbacks have switched their diet from primarily widgeon grass, which is almost not available anymore, to feeding on these much more abundant invasive clams. Unfortunately, that shellfish taints the flavor. And the canvasback is no longer the culinary desire that we originally used to have. It's not as popular anymore. And some of these other fish-feeding diving ducks are just the same way. There are duck hunting seasons for mergansers, and I've seen down in Virginia in the Chincoteague area some hunters with a real brace of them, 5 or 6. They're not edible. And so basically that sport may be a sport, but it's certainly not something that creates food for the table in that case. So canvasbacks have switched, and it shows the adaptability of these diving ducks to change according to whatever is available down in the sediments in particular. Good question.
We've seen or heard common loons from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
Are they here wintering? They're also
and they are not ducks.
Right.
So I haven't done them. We're going to see them at Ocean City. We'll see both species. If we saw them at Oakley Street, it would be on the Cambridge waterfront, somewhere down in Cambridge, fairly distant views, of course, not now. But hopefully at Ocean City, we'll have a chance to see both species. The common loon is found in the Chesapeake Bay in the wintertime. They go flightless for part of the wintering years, so they better be where there's food. They feed on fish for the most part, especially menhaden. And they haven't been as common, at least on our Audubon Christmas count, as in the past. But nonetheless, yeah, but they're not ducks. They are a different group of water bird, and I'm going to treat them later on when we get ready for Ocean City. But again, a valid question there. They, of course, are extremely good divers, and they can stay under a lot longer than any diving duck. And like a diving duck, their feet are so far back on their body that they really have to run a long way to get airborne. And they also can swim underwater more powerfully and deeper than diving ducks can.
And Wayne, are any of these ducks, whether they're the first group or the last group that you talked about, huntable? That is, are like the geese, and are there limits and all that kind
Yes. It's heavily regulated, and in fact, normally I might have some data from the current waterfowl survey. The DNR flies over the bay and tributaries and the coastal bays about mid-January of every year, and they do a waterfowl survey, counting the birds from the air. Obviously, they have not been able to do that yet this year, so we don't know what the counts will look like. Our duck counts for the Audubon Christmas count in St. Michael's was done on the 14th of December, and our duck populations were down, but that particular day was our first snow, and so and a very, very high wind that followed it later in the morning. So it was almost impossible to see the ducks on the water, and those birds that were in the air were few and far between. So that's not going to help us either with looking at trends. But there's some good news about waterfowl, and if time allows, I'll share that with you at the end here. Others? These are great questions. I'm really glad we can do this. All right. Ann Halberton, who is co-owner of the Y Farm, it actually is her farm up in Chestertown. I'm sorry, in Centerville. I took this course there when we were doing waterfowl a couple of years ago, and she's reasonably good at taking pictures when she can, and this is one of her photos. I think it's just wonderful. We're talking now about geese and swans, and I think we all know what those are. And that thing behind there, that's an asteroid. So, been nice knowing you. Isn't that a beautiful picture? Absolutely gorgeous picture. This is the Canada goose, and here they are in a field in front of my place a couple of years ago. Everybody knows them. They know the white cheek patch and the grayish brown body, dark legs. But once in a while, if you watch your flocks, you get a what's it. I have no idea what that is, except to say it's not a distinct species. It's a hybrid from God knows where. It's probably a Canada something, by something, and maybe by something. I don't know for sure. The bill looks pretty much like a Canada goose does. It seems to be longer necked than the geese that I'm used to seeing. There are a couple of other geese that kind of look like it, but not. That's a what's it. So if you get a lot of Canadas on somewhere in your neighborhood or whatever, it's worth, with your binoculars, just looking for the weirdo. It might actually be a rare species, but it also just might be something like that. But there is one other goose that's not common, but has been recently split off from the Canada goose. Once in a while, you see flocks of Canadas where there are 4 or 5, or maybe just one, smaller looking goose, more like mallard size. Mm-hmm. And when you get a good look at it, you'll see the bill is shorter and the face is a little bit more round. And on the back of the bird, and some of them, the vermiculations here show up and make it look a little bit light colored relative to the backs of the big Canadas. I always tell when I go out with the young birders that if the bird looks like a mallard or about that size, then you can probably call it the new species that has been split up from the Canada goose. There's another view of one down at Blackwater, and it's the cackling goose. It is no longer considered part of the Canada goose. It's not a color morph or a variant. There are lots of variants of Canada geese. There's a lesser Canada goose and a greater Canada goose and so on. But the cackling goose is smaller and has that shorter bill and somewhat more rounded head profile. And this one I had to blow up a lot, so sorry for the pixelations, but the vermiculations here on the back show up pretty well in this particular one. This was one with a bunch of Canadas. They seem to be increasing. It's a Western species for the most part, Pacific flyway, but they seem to be increasing in the east, and we may be seeing more of them. It's hard to pick them out, but if you get a big flock of Canadas and you see a couple of geese off on their own, and they look smaller, they may be cacklers. And when they're in the air, a Canada goose that looks more like a mallard, that size, and probably will flap a lot more too because the wing loading is different. It takes more rapid wing beats. That might be your first or whatever cackling goose. They don't occur in groups more than 4 or 5 usually around here, but we get them every year. We had, I think, 8 this year on the Christmas count, because there were a number of groups of 5 or 6 that were seen.
Do they have a different call?
It's a little bit higher pitched, but I couldn't tell the difference. I haven't heard or seen enough of them. Some of the younger birders with really sharp ears say the call is more higher pitched, and they can pick it out of a flock of honkers. I probably couldn't do that.
Back anytime they want.
Do they migrate with the Canada geese?
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
I don't.
And again, most of them occur on the Pacific flyway, so we tend not to see them here. Canada geese come in 2 sizes in a sense here in the East. Back when Canada geese were not that common in the 50s and 40s, hunt clubs would bring in Canada geese and introduce them here with the hopes that perhaps they would start migrating from here and returning. That didn't quite happen that way, but one of the things that did happen is that because the hunt clubs were doing this, they didn't just pick little geese. They picked the biggest variants they could find to bring them here. And so our resident summer Canada geese that don't migrate, in fact, are often larger than the ones that migrate down from the north, which are, in a sense, more wild type east, if you will. So that when we have these early hunting seasons, sometimes in September for resident Canada geese, they're bigger birds. And then when the migrants start to show up after Thanksgiving, you can actually see the difference. The migrants are much higher in the air. They form these V flocks as they move in. But up until then, often the geese are rather big. And those are the resident geese that were descendants of the ones brought in from the West. Okay, familiar sight out my window right now, but these are birds. This is a flock in Delaware of these white geese that are pretty common in huge flocks, and then in between, almost nobody. You may see some darker looking birds in there, and we'll explain that in just a second. Here's one of Anne's pictures showing them flying overhead the same morning. No moon in the background in this case, but notice the darker bird in the middle with the lighter head. Yeah, that's right. So here's the typical snow goose. All white, a little bit smaller than a Canada goose. In flight or in the bird in the background, you can see that they have the black wingtips. They also have a very interesting mark around the bill called the grin patch, which is usually dark. And so shows up against the lighter color of the bill. And that's the snow goose. So is that. So we have, this used to be considered a different species. Again, in older books, you may see it as blue goose. And then you may actually see a picture. I know one of the older Petersons that I had blue snow hybrids. Well, since they're the same species, hybridization isn't quite the right word. It's interbreeding, perhaps. But the blue goose has a light head. It has the same grin patch as a snow. And then this lovely dark blue-gray body. It's the same size. Here in the Atlantic flyway, it's the relatively uncommon color morph of the snow goose. probably one in most flocks, maybe 1 in 30 or 40 or 50. Down in Blackwater, you can always find a few. But further west, sometimes the blue goose is much more common relatively than not more abundant necessarily than the snows, but a lot more common overall. Why the color? We don't really know. The hypothesis is, at least one of them is, that when they arrive on their breeding grounds up in the Arctic, if the blue goose arrives earlier, its darker plumage enables it to warm up quicker and therefore to have an edge on laying eggs. Whether that's totally true or not, I don't know. I haven't seen any research that really proves that one way or the other. But it is a common color morph in the populations of snows. Okay. And then, since this is about geese and swans, our resident wintering swan is called the tundra swan. Again, in older books, it might be called whistling swan, but this is the tundra swan now. It's been renamed for 20 years or more. The other swan that we're like that we might see is the one that's introduced and it's somewhat invasive, the mute swan. A mute swan has a much more curved neck, holds its wings arched above its body, and the bill is orange with a black knob at the base. So it looks a lot different. If you want to see any of those things, they're usually present over at Bombay Hook National Wildlife Refuge in Delaware. We've eradicated them as much as we can from the Chesapeake Bay. There was a population on a farm in St. Michael's, and a few of those escaped. And for some reason or other, that population was incredibly aggressive and was able to start reproducing and actually taking over habitat, pulling up grasses, and generally messing up shorebird and common tern habitats. And so very controversial, but DNR went after them. And basically, they shot a few. For the most part, they found nests of mute swans and they addled the eggs either by shaking them or covering them with oil. And the result is now that seeing a mute swan in the Chesapeake Bay region is very uncommon and it's probably escaped from a farm, something to that bit. They're native over in Delaware now. I mean, it's a introduced species, but they're able to reproduce over in the Delaware bit, and they're not showing the aggression that they showed over here. It just seemed to be that particular population was incredibly aggressive. And I guess it's just as well we got rid of it. And perhaps if others begin to escape from farms, they won't be so bad and we can get along together with them. But anyway, tundra is our native bird. Again, like many of our ducks, it's a winter species only. And in the spring, when they start staging on farm fields, you often see them in hundreds across the field, but they're nowhere as packed together as they are in snow geese. And there is no black wingtip when the bird is in the air. Okay, geese and swans. Any other? There are a couple of other birds I was hoping we would see down at Oakley Street, but we'll see certainly at Ocean City or somewhere. Anyway, those are the gulls. Nobody likes gulls. I don't know why. They're big. They're abundant. They're fairly not easy to scare away. But for some reason, they're never popular with birders. But anyway, we have to learn them anyhow. And this is the herring gull. It's a fairly large gull. One of the problems with gulls is that they take 2 to 4 years to mature, and in between they're often very scruffy and scraggly and so on. And so I'm not going to get into that kind of detail until we get into the field. But the herring gull shows, this is an adult, shows the gray back, which is called the mantle, and a light gray back. It has a fairly large bill that you can see here, marked with a little bit of red on the bottoms. A lot of gulls have that. The young apparently tap that and cause the adults to regurgitate food for them. And the legs in this adult are pink. In the wintertime, gulls often get streaky heads, but otherwise they maintain that clear-cut look. Just a tad smaller, but also very common is, especially in the wintertime, is the ring-billed gull. Aptly named because the mark on the bill goes all the way around just before the end. The bill actually, if you compare those two birds, the scale isn't too bad off. The bill is less robust, than that in the herring gull, and that sometimes can help at a distance as part of the jizz for that bird. And in the adults, the legs are greenish yellow, not pink. A lot of immature gulls have pink legs, so that doesn't help there. But if you get a mature one, leg color is often very useful. That's common now. It doesn't, ring-billed gulls for the most part don't breed here. We get a few, but for the most part, their center of distribution is the Great Lakes. So they are more likely to appear in fall and early in wintertime, whereas herring gulls are here year round, especially thanks to Poplar Island. The world's largest gull also is here. This is a winter version showing the streaky head that some of these guys have. This bird is big enough to swallow a flicker whole, because I've seen it happen. This is the great black-backed gull. And it is the world's largest gull. So also pink-legged in adults, but the back is quite black, very dark charcoal. Bill is massive. And as I say, the bird is big enough to swallow a flicker. I saw this happen when I was surf fishing one spring. A flicker came in off the Atlantic, exhausted, and dropped into the wash of the waves. It never got quite to shore. And a great black-backed gull came over and swallowed it in one go. So that's a big bird. There is another one down in Cambridge, although normally I wouldn't emphasize it. I was hoping we'd see it. There's a bird that is increasing, apparently from distribution centers in the Great Lakes, increasing here in the east. It's the lesser black-backed gull. This is in winter plumage. It's in a flock of herring gulls. You can see it's about the same size, but the back of it is slaty, not dark slate, but a lighter slaty color. And it is smaller, therefore, than the great black-backed as well. It's in a flock of herring gulls, also showing winter plumage. And if it stays where we found it the first of the year, we'll have a chance to do a quick comparison of it. It's apparently increasing somewhat in the east, so that we're going to see more of them. I'm not good with the immature for that one. So hopefully we get an adult. Here's another bird. Know that one?
Cormorant.
Yes, this is a cormorant, a fish-eating bird, actually related to pelicans. All of those birds have a pouch at the base of the bill and the lower mandible. That's called the gular, G-U-L-A-R, pouch. And all of these birds in this particular group, and the most extremes are the pelicans, have that gular pouch. So does the cormorant, so does the northern gannet, and some other birds as well. Double-crested cormorant, you can't see that on this bird, the crest that is, because it's a winter bird, but also because it's a juvenile. If I had a picture of the bird facing us, it would be light from the bottom of the throat down to the top of the belly. Marks a juvenile bird. The one on the right is an adult bird. I just caught it just before it defecated and flew off. But that's what the adult bird kind of looks like. There are some other cormorants we might see in other species at Ocean City, but they haven't showed up this year, so I'm not going to worry about it yet. Anyway, double-crested cormorant, very abundant off Poplar Island in the spring. A few overwinter in this area. We'll, again, may see them. There's a bunch that winters by the bridge on the Choptank River in Cambridge.
And they sink. They're really fun to watch because they can't swim. So.
Well, they can swim and they dive like mad, but their feathers, in order for them to stay underwater, their feathers soak up water.
Yeah.
And so you often see cormorants sitting on buoys with their wings extended, drying out. They don't have the same kind of oil that other waterfowl have, but it enables them to stay under with ease. Okay, I'm going to leave you with some interesting news, bad news and good news. This paper has often been cited since it first appeared in 2019, and I won't try to read all the technical jargon in here, but it basically was taking data from eBird, Christmas bird counts, a variety of other citizen science projects, radar, and putting it all together to try to get some sense of how Native American bird populations are changing. And what they found was quite sobering. Integration of those data indicates a net loss approaching 3 billion birds, not species, birds, or 29%, we'll say a third, of the 1970 abundance. That is a loss of a third of North American birds in 50 years. A third down. So if you say, gee, there ain't as many birds as there used to be, you're certainly right. And that in that paper, they did some graphics trying to show how that decline might have looked. And they also grouped the birds by habitats. In this case, they use what are called biomes, which are large habitat groups. And I don't like that as well. It's harder to get a handle around that unless you're into professional stuff. But the State of the Birds report, and the latest one I think is 2024. Anyway, the State of the Birds report looked at those trajectories in terms of classes of birds. And
You don't care for the fudge?
yeah, look at the grassland birds, 34% down. That's why we're concerned about controlled burning for grasslands.
I want a different recipe. This recipe I don't like. But
yeah, but look at the ducks and geese, and look at the geese and swans. They've increased about 1,000%.
Geese are out of control.
And the dabbling and diving ducks have increased by 34%. Other water birds, which might include some cormorants and so on, a little bit up. Waterfowl on the whole, and this is a very big generalization because sea ducks are down, for example, but waterfowl on the whole in the last 50 years have increased a bit. Other types of land birds, our grassland species, our forest birds, our birds of prairies and so on, have declined. So while the net effect is about a third of the bird population across North America in 50 years, the good news of all that is that some of our water birds are recovering. And I'm going to leave you with the question as to why. I have an answer, and we'll look at that answer by the time we wrap the course up. But it's something worth keeping in mind. Our waterfowl have been increasing over the last 50 years, especially relative to a lot of our land-based birds that nest here, that winter here, that migrate through here. All of that indicates a decline.
Habitat.
Undoubtedly, and I think you're right, in general, it's habitat. But beyond that, why?
Improved in land quality, it's all pavement. So.
Yeah, that certainly is a big difference, but there's more to it than that.
Yeah,
especially when you deal with grassland species. I mean, you know, that's an old field, and yet they were one even before this study was done. They were the ones that were declining most. And interestingly enough, in the 70s and 80s, when I was teaching at Washington College, the decline of grassland species was ignored, and most of the Audubon folks were focusing on the FIDs, the forest interior dwelling birds. And yet, the data, even then, for some of these breeding bird surveys showed grassland species were declining a lot more rapidly. It wasn't really until about a decade ago that we began to inform our conservation efforts to look at early successional species. Curious, that the data were right in front of us all the time. But the word habitat is good. It's a good insight into it. And then the question is, what more? What does that really mean? And I'm going to leave you with that because one, we're out of time, but two, because it's a question that we'll revisit in the field and in subsequent classes as well. They also include this in the State of the Birds report, what they call tipping point species, which have lost half their population in the past, and they continue to decline. But that's a specialty of that particular report. I'm more interested in the overall classes. That's it. How about that? So I'm going to stop share. Any final questions here? We're about out of time. Okay.
You had asked me to just mention the Friends of Blackwater are having 2 speakers the end of February. I sent out a flyer. It'll be held in Cambridge. 2 terrific speakers, just like Wayne, knowledgeable and good speakers. Ron Ketter and Matt Whitbeck. Matt actually works at Blackwater. Ron is a birder all his life. And we'll be talking about waterfowl and shorebirds. So,
Ron Ketter is a member of the Talbot County Bird Club. If you go on trips with us, you'll see him once in a while. He often leads trips to Blackwater. And when you said he has been birding all his life, the Vermonter's reply to that is not yet.
I like that. I'll tell him that.